Hello everyone, welcome to St. Paul's Lutheran Church of Wurtemberg in Rhinebeck, New York. This is our first Ziegenfuss University of the year. It's October 13th, 2025, and this is a good day to talk about Columbus Day because it is Columbus Day today. So there's a lot of confusion surrounding it, and let's just dive right in here. I'm going to try to do this whole thing in an hour, so stay tuned. Well, first of all, these are the dates of Christopher Columbus. It's always good to have a window, when did he live? This is a 19th century romanticized painting of Christopher Columbus. So here he is, and where is he looking? He's looking to the west, to the New World. I think it's fantastic. And what is this? This is a statue of Christopher Columbus that's in Columbus Square in Manhattan, New York. And it was dedicated on Columbus Day, October 12th, 1893. So put that little date aside, 1893. Now, what is Columbus's legacy? There are a lot of people, you're going to be watching the news today, and people are going to be bad-mouthing Christopher Columbus. He's like the bad boy, right up there with like Hitler or something. So we need to know about him. They say things like, he killed 70 to 100 million indigenous people were killed by Europeans, and he's the ones that started it all. Or the American Holocaust, 100 million Native Americans killed. Now, how many Native Americans were in North America before Christopher Columbus landed in 1492? We don't quite know. They didn't have a census, they didn't go around counting them, so we don't quite know. So this is all based on like estimates of things. So we don't quite know how many people. And a good rule of thumb, what was the primary occupation of most Native Americans? Indians. Well, yeah, trying to stay alive, and they were what? Hunter-gatherers. Okay, so you want to use the correct hunter-gatherers. And hunter-gatherers, and some of them were small farmers. And what's the holy trinity of Native Americans, especially in the Northeast? Beans, squash, and corn. Right? The holy trinity. You could live on that. You get a piece of fish and a squirrel once in a while, you can live on corn, squash, and beans. It's quite a thing. So, but most of the Indians are hunter-gatherers, and they're nomadic. They roam around. And if I was to take you, strip you naked, throw you in the woods, right? How many square miles would you need to survive? Well, first of all, you need a family, clan, and tribe. And what's the rules? The women do the gathering, the men do the hunting. And how does hunting usually work out? We have a lot of hunters in here in our congregation. They go out deer hunting. How did you do this year? I didn't see a thing. I could see 10 deer between here and the tops when I go into town. But for some reason during hunting, there aren't any deer around. So if you had to depend on your man bringing home the meat to keep the family going, they're all going to die. So hunter-gathering is a tough occupation. And how about gathering? Like, are you going to live on acorns and blueberries or something? Well, that's all seasonal. So they lived on the edge. They had a short lifespan, right? And it's a dangerous thing to be living as a hunter-gatherer. And you need about 100 square miles in order to support a family, clan, and tribe of 25 people working together. So as a result, the population is very thin in all of North America. So you need like a tremendous amount of land. Like, okay, again, imagine if you had to get 2,000 calories a day off of the land around here. It's really a hard thing to do. And again, you make a mistake of thinking, well, hunter-gatherer people are stupid or something. Or, no, they know how to survive in the land. And they know like what plants are edible, what plants aren't edible, what the season of the shad run or whatever. They're really in tune with that because that's how they make a living. Talk to a farmer sometime about when is it going to rain or what time to put in potatoes or what time to... They're experts in their profession. So I hold them in high regard. Now, so this number of 100 million would be ridiculous. Not enough land to support a population like that doing hunter-gathering. And of course, rethink Columbus Day, okay? Because we're supposed to call this Indigenous Peoples Day. And that's another thing. What do you call these people? Indigenous people? Do you call them Indians? Do you call them Native Americans? Or in Canada, First Nations people? Here's what you do. You say to them, who are you? What are you? And they're probably going to respond by saying, I'm a Cherokee, I'm a Choctaw. They identify with their tribe. They don't say, I'm an Indian, or I'm a Native American, or I'm an indigenous person. So it's a good, just polite, golden rule. Always ask the person, well, what do you want to be called, or what do you want, and if they say tribe, then that's what they are. They're a Cherokee, right? And do I know a lot about Native Americans? My favorite subject in college, I took a couple of classes in anthropology and Native American studies, fantastic stuff. And I lived in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma has 39 tribes, and so there they have license plates for their tribes. So they have the Choctaws have their own plates, the Cherokees have their own plates, the Chickasaw people. It's fascinating, right? So what do you want to be called, right? And they usually identify with their tribe. And here, abolish genocide, or abolish Columbus Day. It's a genocidal event, so get rid of Columbus Day. And what do we call it? Indigenous Peoples Day, right? Because that's supposed to be less offensive or something. Well, what is this? Does this have anything to do with religion? Well, it does. What is the name of our denomination? We're the Lutheran Conference and Ministerium, the ELCM, that's what we're called, right? And we were part of the ELCA, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, until 2000 when we voted to leave. So since the year 2000, the ELCA has really gone to the far left, woke. It's like taken over by democratic socialists, and I'm not exaggerating on this. So in 2016 at their national convention, they passed a resolution repudiating the doctrine of discovery. Okay, so what is the doctrine of discovery? It's the idea that somehow Europeans decided that they discovered the New World and that it's a good place to propagate Christianity and force our cultural values upon the indigenous people. So we're supposed to repudiate this. You know, no doctrine of discovery. So it's like a foul word in the religious left, the progressive Christianity. Then, a couple years ago, they passed another resolution called the Land Acknowledgement Resolution. Okay? And what does that mean? With every meeting of the Synod, they bring an indigenous person in, and they do a land acknowledgement statement before the meeting begins. And I'll read one to you in a couple of minutes. And what's the bottom line? People on the progressive Christians on the left, they want to have reparations, right? Or just like slavery, reparations. They want a return of tribal lands, and they want to replace Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. In other words, you're supposed to be ashamed of yourself for admiring Christopher Columbus. Shame on you, okay? So you should give money to people, I guess, right? So this is part of the agenda, right? So here's a land acknowledgement statement that I've adapted for St. Paul's Lutheran Church of Wurtemberg. So from now on, every time we have a meeting, I guess we should read this. And this is the ELCA document. We are gathered in this assembly on the original and ancestral homelands of the Mohican, Munsee, Band of the Lenape or Delaware people, the Wappinger Confederacy, and the Mohawk, the easternmost tribe of the Six Nations of the Iroquois Confederacy peoples. We give thanks for their presence here since time immemorial. We also wish to recognize and honor all of our indigenous siblings, you don't say brother or sister, who have continued to call this land their home. Let us remember the indigenous people and tribal nations who were first to love, pray, grow, celebrate, cry, drum, and dance, and sing upon these lands. Okay, so that's how you begin every meeting in the LCA, right? Now, first of all, are there a couple of erroneous statements in here? Yeah, there's several of them. First of all, were the tribes that lived in the Hudson River Valley, were they here since time immemorial? And the answer is no. Native American tribes are hunter-gatherers, and what do? They move. They move a lot. They follow the game, okay? So you can't say that, you know, a million years ago, these tribes had this territory staked out, and they've always been here, they always will be there. No, they're on the move, okay? And are they outstanding stewards of the land, okay? We have to get over the concept of the noble savage, right? What's that? I have a picture of the noble savage right here. For Western European Enlightenment people, they follow Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He's a French philosopher who inspired the French Revolution, 1789 to 1799 to 1815. Well, what is his idea? He rejects John Calvin's concept of what? The total depravity of man. So what's the opposite of total depravity of man? Patrick, you know this. Man is inherently good. Okay? So they reject the idea of the fall. So with the fall, sin and death entered the world. They think that in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve stepped up by acquiring the knowledge of the knowledge of good and evil. So the human condition improved in the Garden of Eden. It wasn't a fall, it was a rising. It's the opposite of everything. And Jean-Jacques Rousseau, one of his killer concepts, very important concept, is this: cities are evil and country is good. Okay, so what is that supposed to mean? He thinks that civilization has corrupted the pure people. Right? So people have been corrupted by living in Paris or London, right? Or New York City. We've been corrupted. So do we think this way? Yeah, okay. What happens when, in the gangster movies in the 30s, we're going to send them up the river? What does that mean? You're going to Austining, right? Because we believe in the Rousseauian idea that you take city people that are criminals and you send them to the country to be rehabilitated, right? So the idea that country is good, city is evil, that's a Jean-Jacques Rousseau idea. So as a result, when Europeans started bumping into indigenous peoples in Africa, Australia, North, South America, they don't see people that are, savages or something. No, they're noble and peaceful people that are at one with nature. So they take all of the attributes because they haven't been corrupted by civilization. Western civilization is corrupt and evil. And these people are pure souls who live off the land and they're one with nature. See that? That's called the noble savage idea. So you see a lot of 19th century romanticism is big into this. Romanticism believes that, the countryside is so beautiful. Think of Frederick Church's paintings, big land, little people, right? So it's an Eden out there. And we have corrupted this stuff by building factories and, slums and all that sort of thing. The noble savage idea. So we have to be careful not to project your naive Rousseauian ideas on the Native Americans and say, oh, noble savage. No. They're people just like us. Okay, what a concept. And this is one of my favorite, remember this ad from 1971? Yeah, the Crying Indian ad. So it's keep America beautiful. Right? And the tear comes down. The problem is, this guy's not a Native American, he's an Italian from New Jersey. Italian American from New Jersey. Keep America beautiful. Guido, the Crying Indian. Okay? A lot of this stuff, if you look into it, it's like, we're being conned here, right? So is pollution a bad thing? Yes, it is, and we need to clean it up and so on. But, this is like fraudulent, right? So this is a better view of the Native Americans. This uses the Aztecs. Okay? What did the Aztecs do? They would capture and enslave the weaker tribes around them. I mean, might makes right? Yeah, just like it does in Europe. Okay? Might makes right. So they would capture and enslave the weaker tribes, and they take them up the steps of the pyramid and cut their heart out and offer the beating heart to the gods. If an Aztec ever says, you want to go to church with me? What's the correct answer? No, thank you. I'm a Lutheran. Okay? So this is what they were doing. They were practicing slavery and human sacrifice. And this is why when Hernando Cortez landed in what's now modern-day Mexico and defeated the Aztecs, the neighboring tribes joined Cortez to defeat these horrible, oppressive Aztecs that were killing people. Okay? How are they able to cut the heart out of a living person anyway? Obsidian, that's volcanic glass that's 100 times sharper than surgical steel. And they had a monopoly in it. And they used it to cut out people's heart and sacrifice to the gods. Right? In other words, they're just like us, right? And here, these are more depictions of Native American atrocities and so on. And this is Hernando Cortez with, what did he have, like 150 men, plus the neighboring tribes that supported him. And he conquered the Aztecs. It's modern-day Mexico City. And was that a hard fight? Yeah. The Aztec warriors had swords that had obsidian blades into it. If they swung it the right way, they could cut your head off with it. So it wasn't a case of, oh, we had guns and Damascus steel swords or something and we were outgunned or something. No, it was, and we also had horses, right? But they were tough warriors. And you have to respect them. These are tough warriors. Most Native Americans, like the Comanches and the Apache, yeah, they're unbelievable warriors. Here's Christopher Columbus. Now, is this what Christopher Columbus looked like? The answer is no. There's no contemporary illustration or painting of Christopher Columbus. So these are done like 50 years after his life, or after he died. Now, why do we make a big deal about why is today Columbus Day? In 1892, there was this huge World's Fair in Chicago. It's called the World's Columbian Exposition. And this was a huge deal. And so, and it's the 400th anniversary of Columbus, 1492. So they made a big deal about it. Prior to this, we didn't really do a whole lot with Columbus. It was like kind of a footnote in history. But with 1893, they made a huge deal about it. This is why the statue's in Columbus Circle. It's in conjunction with making Columbus like a big hero here. I think that's fascinating. And again, these are the tickets to it. Something like 3 million people went to this thing. It was quite an exhibit. And it's Augustus St. Gaudens and other great architects and artists were in on this thing. It must have been a beautiful thing. And these are all, the buildings are designed to look like marble, but they're really made out of like plaster. It's kind of like a movie set, right? I mean, what beautiful buildings. And reflection ponds. It was right on Lake Michigan. It was on a previous swamp, and they reclaimed the swamp and built this beautiful thing. And for this, they did a replica of the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria, the 3 ships that Columbus used. And so you can actually get on and walk around. Now, what's one of the things that's amazing about this? How small the ships really were, right? You'd have to be crazy to do this, going out into the North Atlantic. So that's an amazing thing. And it was also where electricity was introduced. So it's called the City of Lights. So imagine if you're a farmer in Wisconsin or something, and you go to this and you see these buildings all lit up. It must have been like, it's the city of the future, right? What a beautiful thing. We take this for granted now. Christopher Columbus, okay, let's go. What's his name? Christopher Columbus. No, his name is Cristoforo Colombo in Italian. In Spanish, it's Cristobal Colon, right? So it depends on what country you're translating it into. And he's a real person. He lived circa around 1450, died in 1506. Here's Christopher Columbus again. There's no known pictures of it, but I like this one because it shows him with his hand on the globe here. And I like Tony Soprano. What does he say about this? There's a whole Soprano episode about this where we have a brave Italian explorer. In this house, Christopher Columbus is a hero, end of story. So that's sort of much where I stand too, He's an important person. So let's learn more about him. First of all, when did he sail the ocean blue? 1492. That's a couple years before 1500, isn't it? 1500 is the beginning of the early modern European history. So there's like you stick a flag in the ground, right? And there's a before 1500 and an after 1500. We would get along all right. If you went back in time to like 1600, 1700, you could understand what's going on, you kind of see what's going on. If we went back to the Middle Ages, it was like a foreign world, Old English, it sounds like German or Swedish or something. So 1500 is like a really important date in history. So Columbus, just like Martin Luther, straddles 1500. So Martin Luther has 1 foot in the Middle Ages and 1 foot in the early modern European history. Columbus is the same way, okay? So think linear, ready? When you study history, why do we read the Holy Bible? The Holy Bible, right, is a history book. And it teaches us that God stands outside of the time and space continuum. We're down here, time, space. And in order to understand the unfolding plan of God, it starts with the creation. The highlight of history is the birth of Christ, the death of Christ. And where's history going? The second coming of Christ. It's a linear view of history. We're not like pagans who think that history always repeats itself in cycles. No, linear history. And if history is linear, it means that you have to look back and go, okay, Abraham is back there, David is here, Jesus is here, we're over there. You have to spread it out in order to understand the flow of an ebb and flow of history. And here's Pastor Mark's rule, right, of studying history. The way it is now is not the way it's always been. What is that again? The way it is now is not the way it's always been. We have it made, right? 2025, we have the heat on, we're nice and cozy, we have electric lights, we have cars, all of it. Has it always been that way? No. 100 years ago, or so, the Industrial Revolution, 1750, literally changed the world. So we don't have to live on self-sufficient farms, we don't have to be hunter-gatherers anymore. Instead, we pretty much live, our incomes are like richer than most kings that have ever lived in the human race. Most people lived on $1 a day, deflated, $1 a day. So can you live on $400 a year? Well, just imagine what your life would look like. Well, so the way it is now, so we have to have a view of the past, the present, and the future. In order to understand the present, you have to know about the past, right? So this is why we read history. This is why we read the Bible, because the way people act, it doesn't change over time. We're fallen, sin, death entered the world, and we know that people are going to act a certain way because they're acting out of total depravity. So, you know, don't be shocked that politicians or gangsters or criminals act the way they do. They're acting the way fallen people act. And if you read the Bible, this is like a psychology manual. You should know, nothing should surprise you the way people act. Right? That's how important it is. So it's important to have past, present, and future. And of course, who's the Lord over the past, present, and future? Well, God is, right? So in God, there's no past, there's no present, no future. Everything is a moment in time. So keep that in mind when you study history. So back then, 1500, what was the guiding thing? Why did people go to war? What did they live and die for? Theology. Theos is God, logia, words about God. And particularly the medieval Roman Catholic Church in Rome. And in Protestant countries like the German-speaking lands, again, they weren't yet until 1871, we were Lutheran or we were Reformed. Or in England, Church of England, the Anglican Church, we were Protestant. So that's the big thing. So today, what do we argue about? Since the French Revolution, 1789, 1799, we no longer fight and argue about religion, we fight and argue about political ideology. So what does that mean? That means that you're an anarchist, you're a Marxist, you're a progressive, you're a classical liberal, a libertarian, you're a Republican, you're a conservative, a monarchist, a fascist, a nationalist. We don't say, what is your religion? See? It's a very important thing. So we fight about politics, right? And without doing a body count, the last 100 years is the bloodiest century in human history, and we've been fighting about political ideology. So, 50 million people killed in World War II, 11 million killed in World War I, and all the little wars in between. We killed between 140 and 430 million people in the last, say, 100 years. I'm talking about 1900 to 2000. So political ideology, so you have to shift your brain and go, okay, what about religion? What about theology? Remember, it's 1492, okay? And what is this called in history? People that want indigenous history or indigenous people's day, they're guilty of a fallacy called presentism, okay? What does that mean? It means they think that they're enlightened and they're moral, the best people that have ever lived, they're morally superior, and they can look back over our ancestors and go, shame on you, Columbus, shame on you, all white people from Europe, shame on you, colonialists, shame on you. So that's called presentism. And is that a problem? Yeah, it's a problem. You can't understand history if you take your values that you made up and somehow project them back over people in time. Very, very important to be aware of that. Presentism. Or it's also called nowism. Oh, we're superior, we're morally superior now. We don't need God anymore. We have our own value system, right? And they ignore the past, present, future. This is why history is not their friend, so they don't read history. And even the present is not their friend, so they don't read newspapers. They know nothing. They only know about the immediate moment, right? And who lives in the immediate moment? Children do, right? Adults are people that we look back and we go, the wisdom of our ancestors, like my father at 94 when he died. Yeah, I respect his wisdom after living his life, right? And you can learn from our ancestors. You can learn from history and be a better person as a result of it. You don't trash everything that went before you was evil and sinister. They can teach us nothing. And we live in the moment only, right? This is why when you talk to young people, it's very difficult to discuss the Bible with them because they have no concept of history. They have no idea. They think that Paul and Moses and Jesus all lived in the same day or something in the same neighborhood down the block. They don't understand the flow of linear history. You have to get the ducks in a row to really appreciate how God works in time and space. So presentism. So that's what's going on here. Present day ideas and beliefs are used when thinking about historical events. So this is where you get into like, oh, yes, let's have the land declaration where we renounce everything that's happened. Okay, well, where do you want to set the clock back to? When is the golden age of man? They believe there's a golden age, So you pick a day. What is it? I guess it was 1491 before Columbus came. So when Columbus landed, that was the end of this Eden and the New World where the noble savages live. Okay, so they're very naive about that. In the 1800s, many teachers hit their students. Was that wrong? Well, you're supposed to go, oh, we're so offended, we're enlightened now. Instead, we give little Jimmy Ritalin, right? We cut back his sugar or something, right? So, no. So this is an example of the way we do it. We sit in moral judgment of the people that go before us, right? Many of America's founding fathers supported slavery, okay? And the slavery issue looms large in this whole thing, and I'll talk about that as we go along. Oh, Columbus is no good because they had slavery, okay? Long story short, who else had slavery? Everybody had slavery, including the Native Americans. Native Americans were notorious for enslaving the weaker tribes around them and selling them, right? So everybody had slavery. It's a worldwide, the Chinese did it, the Arabs did it, the Africans did it, everybody had slavery. So why can presentism be a problem? Well, it's very naive, and it gives you a distorted view of history. It leads you to things like, let's call this Indigenous Peoples Day and let's forget all about Columbus. Or let's change the name of the Washington Redskins. As if Native Americans are better off now that they're called the Commanders or whatever the name is. Isn't that odd? So let's get rid of all the Native American names around here, and we'll just call them after, I guess, great communists down through the centuries or something. Isn't that odd? Okay. So let's look at history a little bit. Who's this? Cain and Abel. What did Cain do? That's the first murder in the Bible. Cain killed Abel. Okay. What is that a result of? The fallen human nature. Sin and death entered the world. Murder, right? What's this? This is Old Testament stuff. Joshua did what to Canaan? He conquered the land of Canaan, didn't he? He took the land that rightfully belonged to the Canaanites. And what did the Canaanites do? Oh, they practiced human sacrifice and other abominations for about 700 years. God repeatedly told them to repent and they ignored it. So God gave the promised land to the 10 tribes of Israel. Very, very important. It's a Bible theme, right? What's this? This is the out of Africa theory, okay? So in anthropology, human beings began in Africa and we fanned out and spread all over the world. And how did we do this? Well, following the herds, right? Following the herds. It's in our DNA, it's in our genes to move on to the next place, to conquer the next place. Right? This is what human beings do, right? What's the first commandment in the Bible? Be fruitful and multiply. That's what human beings do. And what's this one here? This is the conquest of Alexander the Great. And what did he do? He starts in Macedonia and he makes it all the way to India. And he wept when he got there because his generals didn't want to go on anymore. It was 12 years of battle. He wept because there are no more worlds to conquer, right? So what is this? It's conquest theory of history, right? It's like, that's what people do. This is the Roman Empire. Were the Roman Empire's great conquerors? They started out in the city of Rome, Romans, and they beat the Carthaginians, who are descendants of Phoenicians, right, from the Bible, and they ended up conquering all of the land surrounding the Mediterranean. Our sea, and again, what do the Romans want to conquer? Any place that produced corn, wine, and oil. Corn is wheat, that's Egypt. Wine is most of the Mediterranean regions, and oil is olive oil. That's the three legs of the Roman economy. Were they interested in Arabia? Well, there's nothing there. Who'd want that, right? So they conquered the territory in and around the Mediterranean, and they had a great navy and a great army. And they built 58,000 miles of roads for what? To move troops from one end of the empire to the other. Roman legions on the march. The amazing people, the Romans. And who are we Western people? We're basically reified Romans, right? Go to Washington, D.C. and look at the buildings there. It looks like the Roman Senate buildings, and the Washington Monument is like a Zeus, the temple, and so on. Who are they? These are the Huns. Yeah, the Huns come from the steppe of Central Asia. And if you listen quiet, you could hear the rumble of the Huns, right? They were unbelievable fighters, right? On horseback. They had composite bows that they could get off like 5 or 6 or 7 shots on a horse galloping full speed.
Weren't those the Mongols?
No, the Mongols, same thing. They're from the steppe of Central Asia, and we'll talk about them too. Like and we're Western Europeans are standing there with a spear and armor, and we couldn't move, and they're riding circles around us. And here, what is this? The Roman Empire fell in 410 to 476 AD because they were conquered by barbarian tribes, right? Like the Huns, the Vandals, the Visigoths. Right? They conquered this. Why would they do that? The Huns, Vandals, and Visigoths are nomadic people, and what do nomads want? Gold. Well, what's good about gold? A lot of value in a small space. And if you're weak and can't fight off the barbarians, they'll come and take it away from you. That's just life. Okay? That's the way the world works. What's this? This is England or Britain in the year 540 AD. The Romans occupied Britain from around 41, 42 BC until around the year 400 when they abandoned it. Okay? And then the local tribes emerged. So England was a place that had tribes, like in America we have tribes in the Native Americans, same thing. Okay? So what happened around the year 400 to 500? The Jutes, the Angles, and the Saxons invaded England and they took it over, right? Anglo-Saxons, right? And they drove the Celtic people off to the fringes of the island. So it's a conquest, right? Anglo-Saxons, right? And again, these are the Vikings, right? They had Viking longboats. They landed and they conquered territories. These are Scandinavian settlements. Now, why did the Vikings do this? The Vikings did this because their homeland is a frozen wasteland with not very much fertile land. So they built boats. They were outstanding carpenters. The Viking longboats are engineering. They actually are flexible and they ride the waves. They're unbelievable sailors, and they did this without a compass. And they made it to they went down the rivers into like modern day Russia. They founded the city of Kiev. So Ukrainians are like descendants of Swedish Vikings. They also settled the city of Dublin, Ireland. That's a Viking city. And they made it to Iceland, and they made it to Greenland. Right? Here's the Byzantine Empire. This is the eastern half of the Roman Empire. So they conquered this territory. And this is Islam. What's Islam? Circa 570 to 632 AD. You have to understand Islam, right? The 5 world religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism. You have to know about Islam. We live in New York, and there's a peace treaty that President Trump signed like right now, right? Well, if you don't understand religion and Islam, you don't know what's going on, right? Secular people would say all religions are equally invalid. So why bother studying about Islam or Christianity or Judaism? No, you have to know this because culture is driven by the cult, the religion. So the key to understanding India is to read about Hinduism, right? So you have to know about Islam. So Muhammad dies in 632. By 732, where are the armies of Islam? They're in Tours, France. They're in the middle of France, the Franks. The Battle of Tours, Charles Martel stops the armies of Islam. Charles Martel is the hammerer, okay? And his son is Pepin the Short, and his son is Charles, Charlemagne, the Holy Roman Emperor, crowned December 25th, 800 AD. So if the armies of Islam would have defeated the Christian forces at Tours, we would be Islamic right now. We came this close, right? And so notice, where did they come? They crossed over in the Iberian Peninsula, which is right here. They crossed over in 711 AD and advanced all the way up, and they made it to Tours by 732. An unbelievable conquest, right? And so Spanish history, which is key to understanding Columbus and the New World, is 781 years of fighting to get the Moors, the Islamic Moors, out of Spain and Portugal. Portugal, same thing. So this shows all the different battles in the territory that they conquered. So, I mean, extremely important to understand that. I'll talk about that a little bit. Okay, these look like they could be the Mongols, right? Full gallop, you know, they couldn't stop them. And the Mongols made it to Baghdad in either 1358 or 1450. Anyway, they destroyed Baghdad, which was like the richest city in the world at the time. And this is what, yeah, it's 1458. That's what stopped Islam. It wasn't the Crusades that stopped them. We lost the Crusades again, and they drove us out of the Middle East. That was in 1291. It's their defeat at the hands of the Mongols that destroyed Arab and Islamic culture. And what's this? Okay, this is the Mongols. Again, this is the largest land empire in human history, and they conquered one territory after another, after another, after another. Unbelievable warriors, right? They rode like these short mares, and they'd have each soldier would have 3 or 4 of them, and they'd ride them, get off, cut the mare, bleed, drink the blood, milk the mare, ferment the milk. It's like, you know, makes them crazy, right? And they get on another horse and keep riding. They could move unbelievable distances, and they would ride circles around the fixed armies. Now, why did they stop? They stopped in, like, here. This is like modern day, like Poland and Hungary. They stopped. Why did they stop? Well, because these ponies need grass. That's like it's like Panzer tanks. They need petroleum to keep going. Without the grass, when you get into woodlands, they stopped. Okay. So the Ottoman Turks. Okay, who are they? The Turks took Constantinople in 1453. Okay, stop. What year did Columbus sail again? That's why he sailed west to get to Asia, because the Turks took Constantinople. Okay, here's the Ottoman Empire. Notice they control this strategic point right here, Istanbul, Constantinople. So the northern Italians, the Renaissance, this is Genoa, Venice, Milan, up here, they would go around here through Constantinople, pay the Eastern Orthodox people a toll, get the cargo here from Crimea that comes from the Silk Road, and then take it back and sell it, and go over the Alps, and they made a fortune. So when Constantinople fell in 1453, guess what? Northern Italy dried up because their income source was cut off. It was a crisis. Like, where do we get spices from? How do we get to China? You can't go this way because you have to pay a punitive toll to the Turks, or they'll kill you and take all your stuff. So they're blocked from going the old Silk Road route. Therefore, you had to take to the sea, which is the next option. Now, that's why Columbus sailed west. He wasn't like crazy, right? He thought he was solving a problem here. Suleiman the Magnificent. This is the peak. They controlled the entire eastern half of the old Roman Empire. And so where did these Native Americans come from anyway? Well, they came from Siberia. It's called Beringia. So 20,000 25,000, 30,000 years ago, when in the last ice age, the world's fresh water was locked up in ice sheets. So 25,000 years ago, if we were sitting right here, we would be under about a mile of ice. So there'd be ice on top of us. And you've been to Long Island before? Long Island is the terminal moraine of the ice sheet. So that's why there's all little round rocks and gravel and so on. Yeah, the fork, that's all like debris, and the ice sheet receded up this way, right? And so there was an opening in the ice sheet that enabled hunter-gatherers from modern-day Siberia to cross over. They followed the herds across because the ocean levels were 200 feet lower than they are now. Florida would be twice as wide as it is now. And England, Britain would have been connected to Europe. You could walk right from France to Europe that way. So the world was a different place 25, 30,000 years ago. So they crossed over, right? And how do we know? We have archaeology, we have fulsome projectile points, arrowheads, and Clovis points. And here they are, okay? And evidently, are the Native Americans one with nature? Well, Paleo-Indians, we think, hunted the American megafauna to extinction, including Columbian mammoths and mastodons, giant sloths, all the giant ancient bison. The ancient bison were like about twice the size of a modern day bison. And they hunted them to extinction. Here, these are, and how do we know this? They actually have found Columbian mammoth bones with Clovis projectile points stuck in their bones. So, and they were butchered by the Paleo-Indians. So they're hunted to the brink of extinction. And okay, this is a modern anthropologist. We study how do you divide up these Indians. First of all, there's 500 nations. How many nations? 500. Okay, in the territory we call North America, and we live in the area of the northern woodland Indians, mostly Algonquin-speaking people. Then the tribes around the Great Lakes, the tribes of the prairie, the tribes of the plain, southern woodland Indians, right? And then, of course, the Aztecs and Mayans are in South America. Where did most people live? Where did most Native Americans live before Columbus's time? Central America, right? So there were, several million of them living in, because that's why. It's green there. It's a good place to live, a lot of game around. So who lived up here? The population is very sparse up here in North America. The place to be is the Caribbean and Central America. Right? So here's a map that you see every once in a while, and it shows the location of the 500 tribes. The tribes are nations. And is this an interesting map? Yeah, it is. But it's not set in concrete. Remember, the Native Americans are on the move. They're nomadic peoples. The Ojibwe, the Chippewa people, were originally farther to the east. And when they got competition from the other tribes and the French that came in, they moved into the area of modern-day Minnesota, and that put pressure against the Sioux, the Dakota Indians. Lakota, you can pronounce it, there's different groups. And so, what's the name Sioux mean anyway? It's the Ojibwe word, it means snakes. So when the French said, who are those people over there? They're the snakes. The enemy people are the Sioux. So the Sioux Indians, Lakota, fought the Ojibwe, Chippewa people for like 1,000 years before white people ever got here, right? And it's that with many of these tribes, where the Crow and the Sioux were arch enemies. The Pawnee Indians, everybody hated them, right? So the different tribes fought each other. What's this? Is this just like, if you say to a Native American, hey, where do you people come from? They're going to say, we sprang from the ground, right? They don't say, we came from Siberia. But if you do DNA testing, this is like pretty much set in concrete. Native Americans came from Siberia and crossed over the Beringian land. You can say that without being embarrassed. And again, these are First Nations around 1600. Again, they want to, okay, let's say, let's do the land proclamation. And were these tribes always here for all eternity? No, they weren't. They moved around. right? So keep that in mind. It's fluid. It's not some static thing. So you turn back the clock to the magic time of 1491, and everybody has to go back to the original land. So I guess all white Europeans, I have to go back to Norway, but I don't think they want us back. We have to go back to Germany. They don't want us. They don't want us back. They got rid of us back. In the middle of the 19th century. They don't want us back. So where do you set the clock? Where's the golden age? Well, they idealize this golden age, right? And again, this shows the location of the tribes. Again, there's 500 nations, so don't make the mistake of thinking all Indians are alike. They all wore war bonnets or something. No, they each have their own culture, language, and tradition, and they're worth studying. It's a very interesting subject. I like Mel Gibson's movie Apocalypto. Watch that sometime. It shows how the Aztecs in Central America, how they acted before Columbus got here. And there's great scenes of, of human sacrifice and all kinds of stuff in there. Here's Christopher Columbus. Again, is that what he looked like? Not really. He's a great man because he brought a paradigm shift to the world, right? So there's a before Columbus and an after Columbus. How many continents are there before Columbus? 3, right? Asia, Africa, and Europe. How many continents do we know there are? There are 7 now. That's because Columbus changed our paradigm. The Columbian Exchange, I'll talk about that a little bit. His name means Christ bearer. And people forget that he's a deeply religious man. He was going to evangelize and make Roman Catholics. Why is that? The threat in Europe is Islam. And he wanted to make money so he could fund a new crusade to liberate Jerusalem. Remember, we lost in 1291? That dream of reconquering the Holy Land is like embedded in the European mind. Just like we kicked out the Moors from Spain in 1492, we can clean out the Holy Land and restore it into a Christian land like it was during the Crusades. So what is it with Islam? They have a lot of people, don't they? Well, what's the solution to that? Well, convert the Chinese and the Indians to Christianity to give us a bigger army than the Islamic people do. So he did it for like a geopolitical religious reason. He's a great navigator. We tend to forget this, right? Columbus was a cartographer, a map maker. He studied the sea. He was a great mariner, right? So he knew what he was doing. People would go, he's crazy to get in there. Why would you do that? Well, he did it because it's an informed decision that he made to do this. He thought the world was 3/5 smaller than it is now. So if you calculate it out, if the world is 3/5 smaller, you can make it to the outer islands of Cathay, China, by sailing due west. So that's what he was thinking. He's a mariner, right? Great mariner. Now, we celebrate Columbus because he's the first of many, right? So the greater explorer during his lifetime would be Vasco da Gama. He's the one who, sailing for the Portuguese, went down the coast of Africa and back up. He made it to India, Goa, India. Amazing accomplishment. And he fought Islamic pirates and so on along the way. And Ferdinand Magellan, this is 1522, about the time of the Lutheran Reformation, he circumnavigated the globe.
His corpse.
Well, he was killed in the modern day Philippines, but his crew, they made it around the world, which is an unbelievable accomplishment. That would be like I made it to Mars and back again. So he's the first of many. Keep that in mind. It did not, Columbus alone didn't do all this stuff. He's the first of many. And he's a deeply religious person. He reads the book of Revelation. He thinks he's fulfilling prophecy. I won't go through all these readings now, but other sheep have I, which are not of this fold, I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. So his idea was to spread Roman Catholic Christianity around the world. He's a mystery man, right? He's born in Genoa. Some people say he might be Jewish, right? Born in Genoa. And why didn't he get money from the people in Genoa to sail to to China? Because they were rich, and now they're really poor. They don't have any money to finance a voyage. And where's Italy? Well, it's in the middle of the Mediterranean. So you have to go to the edge of the Atlantic. That's Portugal and Spain. That's the natural funding source. He's a lobbyist. He lobbied for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, going to the various courts. He tried the Portuguese king, he tried the Spanish kings, and he never gave up. You know, we tend to forget it. We think he just got on a boat and sailed away. No, he had to finance the thing. And he got royal patronage. He never gave up. He had a single vision. He's a great leader. His goal was to find the outer islands of China. He's a navigator, and doing what? Going west to get to the east, because the Turks have the old Silk Road clogged up, right? Cartography, he studied maps, he read maps, he knew maps, and he's a mariner, not a sailor. He's a serious mariner. Some people think he made it to Iceland, he made it off the coast of Africa before he ever went on the voyage, so he knew what he was doing. He's self-educated, he's not an aristocratic person, he's well-read and knowledgeable. He studied, he read books. He read books on geography, astronomy, theology, and history. His motive, right? 4 G's. I make my students memorize this. Gold, right? He wants to make a profit. You know, this is a good thing. It's not a non-profit organization. He wants to make money, right? He wants glory. He wanted to be called Admiral of the Ocean Sea, and he wanted to have royal titles to pass down to his children. He wanted to be an aristocrat, in other words, right? And he wanted to spread the gospel. He wanted to make the Roman Catholic Church the world's leading religion. And you do that by taking the Christian religion to far corners of the world. And he's also geopolitics, because the Turks clogged up Constantinople 1453. It's a crisis in Western, so they had to find a solution to that. And that's what Columbus did. These are the Vikings. Again, these Viking longships are masters of engineering. And they're shallow drafts. They can go up the rivers because they're interested in plundering and taking the stuff of the weak people, right? The Vikings made it all over the place, right? They made it to Greenland, to Iceland, and Vinland, right? Here they are in Iceland. Why don't we honor Leif Erikson from the year 1000 for discovering America? Because the Vikings didn't follow through, right? I like the Vikings. It's a very interesting subject. But the Vikings, they packed up and left. We think there was it's called the Little Ice Age. For about 200 years, the climate got colder, and it changed the way you could do agriculture. So Greenland becomes not economically viable, and Iceland becomes not economic. So they withdrew from this. So they didn't follow through with thousands of ships like the Spanish and the Portuguese did later. And this is Lance aux Meadows. My French is really bad. And this is in modern-day Newfoundland, and they found Viking ruins. It was a camp for about 50 years for the Vikings. And some people think they made it all the way down to like maybe even Cape Cod, right? We don't know yet. We're still doing archaeology. What's that?
When was that?
Around the year 1000 AD. So 400, 500 years before Columbus. And Columbus, we think, went to Iceland and heard these Norse sagas about this land in the west. So he knew what he was doing. He thought it was the outer islands of China. And here are the Vikings, they really got around. Right? You'd have to be crazy to do this in an open ship, but they did. They said 50% of the Vikings never came back. And here, these are the ruins. No, there's no trees. And this is a reconstruction of what it looked like. It's, again, some people think they made it, New Brunswick and down. Columbus was a man. All right, this is Samuel Eliot Morison. I'll talk about him in a little bit. Columbus was a man with a mission, right? And such men are apt to be unreasonable and disagreeable for those who cannot see the mission. Again, he was a visionary guy who said, we can go west and get to China. And that was his vision. And other people, you're ridiculous, you're an idiot, you're a fool, we're not going to give you money. But he convinced people that didn't believe that it was worthy of doing. He was a human. He was a man alone with God against human stupidity and depravity. Greedy conquistadors, cowardly seamen, and against even nature and the ocean itself. He almost died, like on every time he went on a voyage. He barely made it back. So he was a very courageous individual. And he was just, shows the... All right, again, family, clan, tribe. I say this all the time. This is how you have to understand the world. Family, clan, tribe. Expansion of Genoa. Okay, so they had trade routes in the Caribbean or the Crimean Peninsula. When the Turks took Constantinople, it destroyed that whole trading network that they had. And the Northern Italian Renaissance is funded by trade through the Silk Road. And people think, oh, Columbus, everyone thought the world was flat, but only Columbus believed the world was round. That's not true, right? People read the Bible, right, in those days, and they believed there's 3 continents, right? Ham is the father of Africans, Shem is the father of Asians, and Japheth is the father of Europeans. 3 continents. The Bible says it, right? The Bible doesn't talk about North and South America or Antarctica. And this would be what they would envision. The ocean sea would be the water surrounding Africa, Asia, and Europe. Now, does this sound logical? Actually, yeah, it does. Okay? If you dig down, what do you get? Water. So we must be floating on water or something. And if you go west, what do you run into? The Pacific Ocean? There's water over there. If you go east, where do you go? Cape Cod, there's water there. If you go south, what do you see when you get to Gulf of Mexico? You see water there. So the idea that the land is surrounded by this ocean, it's a plausible idea, right? Again, they don't have scientific instruments or satellites. They did this by observation. Here's the idea that, oh no, we're going to sail off the edge of the world. Well, this is like, I'll tell you where this came from. So the ancient Greeks knew the world was round, right? Since like, 200 BC, they calculated that the circumference of the Earth, and they're accurate within like, I don't know, a couple thousand miles. Pretty good calculation. All right, Washington Irving's biography. My favorite writer from Irvington down here, Sleepy Hollow, Washington Irving. He wrote a book about Christopher Columbus in 1828. That's where the idea of Christopher Columbus was going against ignorant Catholic people who believe in the flat earth. And again, Washington Irving is a great storyteller, but you don't want to get into a fist fight at a history bar at 2 o'clock in the morning over this. He's a good storyteller. In his book, so most Americans in the 19th century, we knew about Columbus from reading Washington Irving, who was a great writer, right? Legend of Sleepy Hollow guy, right? Here he is, Washington Irving, and he wrote Tales of the Alhambra. That's the last stronghold of the Islamic Moors before the Spanish kicked them out. And he spent 17 years in Europe, and he learned Spanish. Speaks fluent Spanish. He was born in New York. And he writes The Life and the Voyages of Christopher Columbus, The Conquest of Grenada, Voyages and Discoveries and Companions of Christopher Columbus, and the Tales of the Alhambra. So he was interested in Spain. Now, is that an interesting thing? Yeah. Most of us are Oxford or Cambridge or Harvard people, and we view the world as anything Spanish is evil. It's called the Black Legend. We hate them because they're Catholic, they're Spanish, they're evil, so every movie, the villain is always like a Spaniard. And the good people are the people that are from England or Americans. That's called the Black Legend. So most people don't bother to read anything about Spanish history or Spain and the Caribbean or Columbus even. We don't care about that stuff, right? We care about English heroes. And here's his writings on Columbus. Right? Washington Irving, great guy. And he read Spanish. He got into the original Ad Fontes, get into the documents, original source documents, and study them. This is Andrew Dixon White, another great man. He was one of the founders of Cornell University. You know that book?
I went to Cornell.
Well, you know this book, though? This is a book you should read. A History of Warfare of Science with Religion. It's a very interesting book. And Andrew Dixon White was a great writer. Oh yeah, he was like a real leading. He wrote, I think he was an ambassador to France. He wrote about fiat money in France during the French Revolution. But so he kind of helps propagate the idea that the Black Legend, Roman Catholics are backwards. They believe in a flat Earth, and Columbus is a visionary person. So that's a 19th century thing. H.L. Mencken writes, "This book is one of the noblest monuments of American scholarship and deserves to be read far more widely than it is." Andrew Dixon White. And here it is, Andrew Dixon White. Yeah, diplomat, author, co-founder of Cornell University. I'll keep going here. Flat Earth Society, yeah, okay. And these are maps. Again, see Shem, Ham, and Japheth, right? Jerusalem is the center. Right? Again, that's why the Crusades are key. You have to have the center of the world, which is Axis Mundi is what? Jerusalem. Christopher Columbus. Okay, why? 1453, the Turks take Constantinople, right? And here's the old Silk Road. So we got, for like 1,000 years, we got spices and silk from, everything we want is from China. We love China. It's a Western thing. We love anything Chinese we like. So the Silk Road provided us with these luxury goods. The Turks take Constantinople. This is Constantinople, and it's an unbelievable siege, and they finally got rid of the Byzantine Empire. And they did it by breaching the walls. How did they do it? Here it is, Muhammad II. They made bronze cannons that fired 18-inch cannonballs. So 1453 changed the way we do warfare. It used to be you had a castle and you'd be fine. Now, with a cannon like this, artillery made castles obsolete. Okay, so it's a very important thing in military history. I think they had 19 or 20 of these bronze cannons, and they literally just kept firing until the walls came tumbling down and they marched right in. Conquest, a very important thing. And the Greek scholars fled to the west, and that's the beginning of the Renaissance. The Hagia Sophia is like the Vatican of Eastern Orthodoxy, and now it's a mosque. It's called Holy Wisdom Church. So that if you go to Istanbul now, you can see this. I want to go there someday. 1453, three things happen, right? It's not just Columbus sailed the ocean blue. The first thing is January 2nd, Roman Catholic Spain expels the Islamic Moors after 781 years. The second thing, March 31st, the Roman Catholic Spain expels Sephardic Jews. Why? Because they're not Catholic. They're not Catholic. So they might be like Islamic spies or something. So if you're not Catholic, it's not a good time, because the state religion of the Spanish monarchy is Roman Catholicism, right? And August 3rd, Columbus sails west to get to China. So where do they get the money from? They got the money from the Sephardic Jews, and Ferdinand and Isabella could finance Columbus because they just kicked out the Moors. 781 years, all your money goes to fighting, and now that you don't have to fight anymore, you can do something like, okay, let's give the guy some money, he might be right, okay? So that has 1492 is a very important year in European history. Ferdinand and Isabella, Ferdinand and Isabella Castile and Aragon, they united their two kingdoms together, and Isabella is the one that had the money and the army. So she was the one who was really the dominant partner of Ferdinand and Isabella. They were a couple in love and all that, so it's rare in monarchies, you know, arranged marriage. But she was really the decision maker, and she was a very pious Roman Catholic. And when Columbus said, I want to bring the Catholic Church to China, she was in favor of that. It's like an evangelism mission. Reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula, right? Again, 781 years. That's why Spanish people are really, really, really Catholic. Are they going to embrace the Protestant Reformation in 1517? No, because they spent 781 years fighting for the right to be Roman Catholic. So Roman Catholicism and Spanish nationalism are like this. So to be Spanish is to be Roman Catholic is to be Spanish. Ignatius Loyola and so on. St. James, San Diego, Matamoros, that's San Diego, James the Moor Slayer. He's the patron saint of Spain. And what is he doing? He's Christian, St. James, slaying and trampling over a Moor. So this is embedded in the Spanish DNA. Here, these are this is a coat of arms, 5 severed heads of Moors. Santiago de Compostela, you know, this Rufus and Ruth went on this pilgrimage. A couple hundred miles you walk, and you end up at the Cathedral of St. James, and you wear a clam shell, you know, or a scallop shell. Migrations with the Spanish Jews, they got kicked out. Spinoza and his family, they go to Amsterdam and Rotterdam. Some of them went to the Arab-speaking worlds, and they were very well received. Ashkenazic Jews get expelled from Germany, Yiddish, and they end up in the Pale, Eastern Europe, between, you know, like Russia and Poland, the Pale. Reconquista. Okay, so this is a major turning point. Aragon and Castile united, and they got rid of the Moors after 781 years of fighting. And this is Columbus. He goes there, and where did he get his ideas about China being wealthy? This is Marco Polo. What is the name of his book? The Millions. The Travels of Marco Polo? This is like a best-selling book. Marco Polo goes to China, and he comes back after 23 years. He's in prison, and he tells his adventures to his cellmate, who then they write it down, and it becomes this great story. So Columbus, his imagination about China, Cathay, is fired by reading Marco Polo. We have like a marked edition of his book, all marked up here. He took notes in the columns because he was so influenced by Marco Polo. It was like a best-selling book of the time. Motives, again, what is his motive? You know, the four G's: gold, glory, gospel, geopolitics. And here's more Columbus. Again, this shows the conquest of the Iberian Peninsula. Ferdinand and Isabella. Columbus lobbying. He never gave up. Right? They expelled the Moors and the Jews. Again, this is the 1892, the 400th anniversary of the Columbian. They issued postage stamps for this thing. It was a huge deal. And this is his brother Bartolomeo Columbus was a map maker, and so was Columbus. So they knew what they were doing, right? So they're into cartography and maps. He made 4 voyages to the New World. Now, did he go to New England, Cape Cod or something? No. Who wants to go there? It's a frozen wasteland. The money is in the Caribbean. Remember, that's where the population is. So, and if you go to Mexico, it looks sort of like parts of Spain. So in other words, that's the place you want to be. You don't want to go to New England. So this is where the Spanish really sunk their heels in. 4 voyages. And to the day he died, Columbus thought that he had discovered the outer islands of China. And he called the people Indians, right? Because he thought he was like India, you know, Indians. From a European point of view, Chinese, any kind of Oriental people, they're Indians. They're from India. And here's Columbus organizing, again, in these 3 little mini ships, and they sailed together. And Christopher Columbus, there are 4 voyages of Columbus. I look at the numbers here. His first voyage, he had between 86 and 90 people on 3 little boats, 3 little ships. The second one, 17 ships of 1,200 people. See, the Vikings didn't follow through, he followed through. The third voyage, he had 6 ships with 266 men, and the fourth voyage, he had 4 ships and 147 men. So, and he's the tip of the spear. So many people came after Columbus. And again, his accomplishment is unbelievable, you know, to get in these 3 little ships and to go west and not give up. He had faith and hope. This is the Pope Paul III, and he issues the Sublimus Dei. That means like supreme God or sublime, right? And he divided the world between Portugal and Spain. So what language do they speak in Brazil? Why is that? Because of the Treaty of Tordesillas. I'm mispronouncing it. It's Tordesillas. So everything to the west goes to Spain. Everything to the east goes to Portugal. Who got the best deal? Well, at the time, the Portuguese thought they got the best deal because they got Africa and India. See? And so no one knew what was in the New World, so who cares about that? So, and the Pope at the time favored the Portuguese Catholics against the Spanish Catholics. Politics, right? So that the world was divided then. So that's why now this is Bartolomeo de las Casas. The people that condemn Christianity as an evil religion, which is what they do, right? That we inflicted this upon the nice Native Americans, noble savage. They ignore people like de las Casas, who was a Dominican friar who called for the humane treatment of the Native Americans, right? He called for this, right? And he's one of the leaders to enlighten people in Europe what was going on in the New World. As history rolls on, where are the British colonies? Well, in the north. Why? Because the Spanish don't care about this land. It's a wasteland, right? Cold place, no good. So the Caribbean is what's really, and why do the French have this area? They're going after beaver pelts, and so when the French come, the single men come and they marry the Indian, the squaws. When English people come to the New World, they bring the whole family and try to set up a New England, right? Spanish, they come to conquer, right? 781 years, who are they fighting against? The Moor. What does a Moor look like? They have dark skin and black hair. Are they Catholic? No, they're not. So when they land in the New World, what do the Indians look like? They have dark skin and black hair. Are they Catholic? No, they're not. So you treat them the way you treated the Moors for 781 years. Merciless. See how that works? So from a Native American perspective, the Spanish taking over would be like the worst case scenario, because they come with a lot of baggage behind them. Right, the Reconquest, right? Here's the Moor Slayer again. Again, it's the icons in their church. Battle of Tours, surrender of Grenada, 1492. This is the final defeat. Here's Columbus. Again, the boats. Again, you look at the technology that he had, it's an astonishing thing. The triangle-shaped sail, that's called a lateen sail. They learned that from the Arabs, so you can sail against the wind. Again, he's a navigator. Here he is. These are romantic paintings of him landing in the New World. And here he is reporting back. He brought some Native Americans with him. He brought 10, and all of them died of European diseases except one. And again, this is a problem. They think about 95% of the Native American population died of European diseases over the centuries. Well, why is that? Well, they're hunter-gatherer people. So how do you develop immunity? Well, you live in New York where everybody's coughing on you and you get all the diseases and you build up an immunity level. If you lived in total isolation for generations, hundreds of years, when Europeans come with their diseases, guess what happens? You get their diseases, right? Europeans, we live with our farm animals. Like at the back of the house, we keep the pigs and stuff, and we get their diseases, and the weak ones die, the strong ones have immunity. So when we come to the New World, we didn't know. It wasn't like an intentional thing. Let's kill 95% of the Indians. No, they were like not, because they lived as hunter-gatherers, not in cities. They didn't have immunity. And Christopher Columbus got into political difficulties. He's a great explorer and navigator, but he's not a good politician and governor. And so people who left Spain to go to the New World, they were in it because they wanted to get power and money, right? They're after the gold. And so Columbus was trying to manage these like cutthroats and renegades. The cream of the crop does not go to the New World. It's the mutts that go, the criminals and so on. So he got led back to Spain in chains, and he kept the chains with him as like a badge of honor because he was vindicated. This is Samuel Eliot Morison, the great Harvard historian, and he was a rear admiral in World War II, friends of Roosevelt, and he wrote this 15-volume set of the history of the U.S. Navy in the Pacific in World War II. It's like the definitive book. And he also wrote this book, Admiral of the Ocean Sea. And so in 1939, before World War II breaks out, he goes to Portugal, he gets on a 145-foot yacht, and he retraces the voyage of Christopher Columbus, and he's a sailor, so he records things like the currents, the seagulls, the islands, the location, and he tries to reconstruct the voyages of Columbus. And when he's done, he appreciates Columbus because he had compasses and he had maps and charts and so on. Columbus did it blind, which is amazing. So this whole book is all about, it's an academic book that you can read. It came out, I think, in the 1940s, like 1945 or something. So it's a book you can read and not be embarrassed about. You want to know more about Columbus. Very well written book. And there's Santa Maria, right? These are the ships. And they were like small ships. They were designed to sail in the Mediterranean. They weren't designed to take North Atlantic. And there's the crew, 26 people on the Pinta. That's how small it was. It's like a rowboat with a sail. And remember, sailboats, it's labor intensive. So if windmills and solar panels work, why don't we have ships that have sails? Because it requires several hundred people to put the canvas up, the ropes, and we don't do that. Instead, we have like these big cargo ships with a crew of like 25, right? Because capital replaces what? Labor. So 1/10 of a horsepower, and they use sail power. Took them 33 days to get from Cadiz, Spain to the New World. And you didn't know, so these are Portuguese ships, they're designed for the African coast. And again, they would have been, it's like a bathtub kind of floating. It would be, you'd be like throwing up a lot. They're not like a big ship that's stable. And here, these are the four voyages where he went. Notice, he never set foot in North America. So you can't say Columbus discovered America. He discovered the Caribbean, right, or Central America. And how did they do it? They did this by using the stars to try to get their coordinates. And this is called an astrolabe, right? This is like Arab technology, and it's a way of reading the position of the stars at a certain time of the day to get your position at sea. And this is a marine quadrant. Again, they look and they line up the stars. Santa Maria didn't make it. It got shipwrecked on the first voyage. That was the flagship of the fleet. And we don't know where it is. People have been looking for the wreck of the Santa Maria ever since. But it's there somewhere. And he barely made it back on the Pinta and the Nina. Made it back across the Atlantic, and he landed in Portugal after a horrendous voyage home, and then he reported to Ferdinand and Isabella finally. And he was a big hero. And this is, again, a romantic picture. Shows the peaceful Indians welcoming Columbus, right? Sometimes the tribes are friendly, sometimes not so much. And this is Samuel Eliot Morison writing, Admiral of the Ocean Sea, great book, won the Pulitzer Prize. Yeah, the voyages. All right, Ferdinand and Isabella, here's the voyages. Here he is discovering America. And he read the Bible. Okay, and then remember, he wanted to get aristocratic titles for his family. And these are his son Hernando was a book collector. Here he is, he died, and we're not sure where he's buried. Some people think he's in Seville, some people think he's in Cuba or the Caribbean. We don't quite know where he is, which is interesting. And this is the Columbian Exchange. This is Read Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. I'm going to the home stretch here. This explains a thing called the Columbian Exchange, right? And what happened? Well, the Columbian Exchange is the exchange of goods and people from the New World to the Old World. So Columbus is the one who started this. And things like beans, corn, maize, right, is a New World. Peanuts, pineapples, potatoes come from South America. Squash, tomatoes, that was brought back to the New World, and we brought things like bananas and chickens and cattle, right? Coffee comes from Ethiopia. Horses are introduced by the Spanish. Pigs, right? Spanish pigs are brought. All right, so it's called the Columbian Exchange. Columbus literally changed the world. Very important thing, the Columbian Exchange. There's a before Columbus and an after Columbus. And some other things, they brought diseases. Influenza came from the Old World to the New, the Black Death, right? Smallpox, cholera, and the common cold. If you've never had a cold before and you got a common cold, you're an Indian, you're going to die. We brought chickens, cows, pigs, apples, coffee, and horses. So it's an exchange of things. When civilizations meet, there's an exchange of goods and services and ideas and diseases. Earthworms were brought to the New World. So earthworms are not indigenous. They were brought in the ballast of ships, and they would dump it on the ground, and earthworms spread all over North America. Isn't that strange? Yeah. Spanish colonies, right? So who came here to the New World? Conquistadors that drove out the Moors come to this world. Reconquistadors who reconquered they came to the New World because they're unemployed. They came over here, and they're conquistadors. So what do? Do they do work? No, they fight. So they would enslave people and have huge tracts of land and sit on the front porch and supervise it. They fight. They're not workers. So there's a status symbol, status structure evolves. Here are they dying of smallpox, right? Then the slave trade, that's a 3-hour thing. The old world has a land shortage with a large population, so they have a lot of labor, they don't have any land. The new world has a land surplus with a labor shortage, the opposite. So many people who had no economic prospects in the old world came over here to get free land, right? But then there's a labor problem. What do you do about the labor problem? Well, you enslave the Indians, they're from here, they run away. So you try to have indentured people from England. You bring them over here, what happens to them? Their time runs out after 7 years, and then you have a labor problem again. So they started bringing Africans into this world to do the work. So the African slave trade. And slavery, okay, so here is slave trade, the Middle Passage. Where did most of the slaves end up? About 10% of the slaves were brought to British North America. About 450,000 were brought from Africa. Most slaves ended up in the Caribbean. The worst case scenario would be Jamaica or Haiti, the French Caribbean, or Brazil. And they would work you to death, and when you died, they just go buy another slave because they're close to Africa. And again, this shows the distribution of slaves, the slave trade. And the slaves were concentrated in the South. Again, it's a 3-hour lecture on this. Why? Because cotton is labor intensive. And you have to have people picking the cotton, right? In New England, they have mills, they have ponds, they have factories, so you need Irish people to work there, and you basically pay them crummy wages. You know, people wrote about how the industrial workers in the North have it worse off than the slaves in the South. That was actually one of the arguments during the Civil War. This shows the distribution of slaves in the South, right? Slavery, Haiti, the Haitian Rebellion, 1805, Toussaint Louverture, the French Napoleon, or the Haitian Napoleon, they killed all the white people in Haiti. And this sent shockwaves through the American South that had slavery. So Southerners sleep with pistols under their pillows and are worried about slave rebellions. And they're in the back of their mind, they're paranoid about slavery and the slaves being freed. Okay? Abolitionists in the North, they don't know any black people, they don't know any slaves. So yeah, let's free all the slaves in the South. So this is why it's a toxic idea. Northerners, what do they care? Southerners think they're all going to be killed by the slaves. So that there's a paranoia that goes back to the Haitian Revolution. And silver inflation, right? I probably better end here. So, any quick questions or comments?
Yeah, the Romans were getting their clocks cleaned twice.
Oh yeah.
During the Punic Wars.
Yep.
The Third War, that's when they developed their navy.
Uh-huh.
By copying the Carthaginian ships.
I know. They had like grappling hooks. They would board the Navy. Yeah. Marines, right?
Also, you should get a hold of a book or a movie called Current Wars about the fight between Tesla and Westinghouse and Edison and the 1893 expedition.
Yeah. That was a huge, that Chicago World's Fair is really important just to study that.
Well, you should see it because they recreate the whole thing.
Yeah.
There's a whole big problem between DC and AC.
I know. Yeah.
It's an interesting movie, Current Wars.
The good thing that Westinghouse went out with AC because that's how we do power here. You know, DC doesn't, you can't transmit it far enough.
I know. Look at what they did at the Mills estate.
Yeah.
That was all DC.
Yeah. Well, they probably knew Edison somehow, right?
They did.
Yeah. We can't offend the friend. So anyway, I hope this is an instructive discussion of Christopher Columbus, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's an amazing, whether you like him or not, the guy changed the world.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a before 1492 and an after. And after, he opened up the whole world to us. So, and you don't have to like, I teach my kids, do you have to like these people? No, but you have to know about them, right? You have to like anybody. You don't have to like Napoleon, but you know he's important, he changed the world, right? So, all right, well, God bless you. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Oh, very good. Very
See, he was off to a good start.